welcome to Chapter 1, Paragraph Writing of Writing Foundations. My name is Carrie and I'm going to be your online teacher for this section. When we begin with language, we begin with the most fundamental pieces, which are letters. Letters have sounds, and then letters can also be combined to make words. When we're learning language as young children, this is the very first basic steps of learning the language and using the language. From words, we then develop sentences. We go from simple sentences to much more complicated sentences. And then from sentences, we can join them to later make a paragraph. This is very important and a very important fundamental piece in writing. We will be talking and focusing on paragraphs in Chapter 1. We'll be looking at the pieces that go together of a paragraph. For example, starting with the topic sentence, supporting sentences, and concluding sentences as well. These are the three types of sentences that you will combine to make a paragraph. When you join paragraphs together, you eventually will end up with an essay. So the essay is really the long version of what a paragraph should look like. Again, as I mentioned, we'll be focusing on making a very strong paragraph, as this is the fundamental piece for writing. We'll begin our lesson with what is a paragraph. A paragraph is basically a collection of sentences that describes, discusses, or expresses a main idea. Your paragraph should be about one topic, meaning one main idea. Your paragraph will begin with a topic sentence, which actually contains the main idea and will guide the rest of the paragraph. The supporting sentences are next, and each supporting sentence must relate back to the topic sentence. It is important to have strong supporting sentences. The last thing in a paragraph that's of importance is the concluding sentence. The concluding sentence is a finalization of what you've been writing about. Generally, it is a restatement of your topic sentence, but other writers tend to have a suggestion or maybe an opinion as to how they can finish up. Sometimes some writers will actually even end their paragraph with a question. Now let's look at a paragraph together. I'm going to read the paragraph for you, and then we're going to look at each individual part of the paragraph. Grandma is the best cook. Every Sunday morning she makes me a special breakfast. Sometimes it is oatmeal with cinnamon and brown sugar, and other times it is a bowl of a fruit cup into different shapes. My favorite breakfast is her chocolate chip pancakes with homemade syrup and whipped cream. Grandma also bakes many kinds of cookies. Grandpa is so lucky that he gets to eat her cooking all the time. Now let's look at the first sentence. Grandma is the best cook. This is our main idea. The main idea is what we're going to be talking about, which is Grandma and Grandma's cooking. Therefore, the main idea is stated here in the topic sentence. Grandma is the best cook. We see that Grandma is the topic, and what about Grandma that we're writing about? How she's the best cook. Now let's look at the next few sentences. These are going to be our supporting sentences, and therefore they must relate back to the first sentence, why Grandma is the best cook. The first sentence says, every Sunday morning she makes me a special breakfast. That relates back to Grandma. It doesn't necessarily say why she's the best cook, but she does make a special breakfast, and maybe that makes her the best cook. Now let's look at the second sentence. Sometimes it is oatmeal with cinnamon and brown sugar, and other times it is a bowl of fruit cut into different shapes. Well, I like oatmeal, and oatmeal with cinnamon and brown sugar is really nice. Perhaps this is something that this person doesn't get to eat all the time, and that's why Grandma is a good cook, because she makes it. Let's look at the next sentence. My favorite breakfast is her chocolate chip pancakes with homemade syrup and whipped cream. It sounds delicious. Well, definitely that is a favorite breakfast of mine. We see that Grandma makes chocolate chip pancakes, but she also makes homemade syrup and whipped cream. Those are something that you can buy in a store, so the fact that Grandma makes it does make her a good cook. The next sentence, Grandma also bakes many kinds of cookies. Well, because we're talking about many kinds of cookies, we could mean things like chocolate chip, peanut butter, maybe she makes special M&M cookies. So again, this is a sentence that supports why Grandma is the best cook. The last sentence is a nice concluding sentence. It says, Grandpa is so lucky that he gets to eat her cooking all the time. It's not really a restatement of the first sentence, and it's not really a suggestion either. But it is a good concluding sentence. We know that the speaker is finishing this paragraph because he's not talking about the things that Grandma makes anymore. He's talking about how lucky Grandpa is. As we can see, that was a really good example of a well-written paragraph. It had a topic sentence with a main idea, and then it had supporting sentences to support the main idea or the topic sentence. And then in conclusion, it had a concluding sentence. This paragraph has all the parts of a well-written paragraph and is an excellent example of what a good paragraph should look like. Now let's look a little bit more closely at the elements of a good paragraph. We're going to discuss the things that should go into a paragraph and that every paragraph must have. The first one is the main idea. As I mentioned before, the main idea is really the topic that you're going to be discussing. What makes a good main idea? Well, it should be something that you are interested in and that you want to write about, something that you want to give information to your readers. It should be something that you can either research or something that you already know lots of information about. Remember, if you have to research your material, you can go and use different sources like the internet, you can do books, you can ask teachers or friends and family. The other thing about a main idea that would make a good main idea is it should be something that you believe strongly in. The next thing that you need to have as a good element for your paragraph is that it should be one topic in one paragraph. This is very important. It's very, very important not to switch your ideas around. The reason I say this is because your writing tends to get a little bit confusing and boring, and it's not good if you have lots of different topics. So again, for each paragraph, it's very important to have one main topic. If you want to start talking about a new topic or something different, then you must start a new paragraph. The next element of a good paragraph is to have a strong topic sentence. This is probably one of the most important. A strong topic sentence should have both a topic and it should have what's called a controlling idea. The controlling idea is really what about your topic do you want to write about? Again, the topic sentence is the first sentence of your paragraph, so it should be strong because you want to grab your reader's attention. It also sets up the rest of the paragraph. The last thing you want to have as a good element in your paragraph is to have a very good concluding sentence. The concluding sentence is really a summary of everything that you've just been discussing. Some people like to have a restatement as their concluding sentence, which is really the same as the topic sentence but not using the exact same words. It's called a restatement. The other thing you can do is end your paragraph with a question. That's a really good way to end a paragraph because it gives your readers something to think about. You can also offer a suggestion as well. Later in the chapter, we'll be discussing what makes a good concluding sentence, and we'll talk about some different ideas of how to write a concluding sentence. These are the 4 fundamental elements to have for a good paragraph: a main idea, One topic in one paragraph, a very strong topic sentence, and also a very good concluding sentence. Now let's look a little further into the main idea. As I mentioned before, the main idea is what the author's purpose is for the writing. It is usually stated in the topic sentence, which is also usually placed as the first sentence of the paragraph. However, depending on the writer, sometimes they put it as the ending sentence, sometimes it's in the middle, and sometimes it's embedded. We'll look at all of these examples. Now let's go back to our paragraph about Grandma. Grandma is the best cook. This is the topic sentence, and it also is the main idea. The main idea being about Grandma being a good cook. Here you can see in this paragraph, it's nice and easy to see the main idea because it is in the topic sentence and it's the first sentence of the paragraph. You can see how it sets up the paragraph, and everything after that should be about Grandma and why she's a good cook, or how she's a good cook. Now let's look at another paragraph where the main idea is not the topic sentence as the first sentence. Looking at our next paragraph, I'll read it to you. The smell of popcorn and the juicy taste of butter, in addition to the rainbow of colored candy, the sounds of excited voices and laughter, and of course the big screen itself, are all reasons why I love going to the movies. Now when we look at this paragraph, the first sentence, the whole paragraph is really one sentence. It's broken up by some commas, but we can't say that the topic sentence is the smell of popcorn and the juicy taste of butter. Although it's part of what would look like the first sentence, that's not what our paragraph is about. Now let's look at the end of the paragraph. It says, these are all reasons why I love going to the movies. That right there is our main idea. It's not stated in the beginning, but it is still a functional main idea. It talks about why you love going to the movies. Therefore, all of the sentences in this paragraph should discuss why you love going to the movies. When we look at them in closer detail, they do. The reasons why this person likes going to the movies is the smell of popcorn, also the juicy taste of butter. Then for a more visual side of it, they talk about rainbow of colored candy and sounds of excited voices and laughter. And then of course there's the big screen. As we can see from this paragraph, the topic sentence is not as we predicted. It's not the first sentence of the paragraph. It actually occurs at the end of the paragraph. This is still a very well-written paragraph, and it explains why this person likes going to the movies. You can see that this is another example of the main idea occurring in a paragraph, but not as the topic sentence of the first sentence. Now I will talk to you about an embedded main idea. This is a little bit harder to see at first, but it just takes some practice. An embedded main idea is one that is not in a topic sentence, and it is not clearly stated as a sentence in the middle of the paragraph, and it's also not the last sentence of the paragraph. To understand a main idea as an embedded idea, you really have to understand what the implied thinking is, or what the implied idea of this paragraph is. Be careful not to get fooled. You do have to read the paragraph in full detail and think about what is the one thing that comes to mind that keeps being repeated. That will be your main idea. Now let's go to the next paragraph. I will read it to you, we'll go through it together, and then answer the questions below. Ugh! My camera is all slimy. I was trying to photograph a humpback whale as he blew from his blowhole. It was too close. When a humpback whale breathes, it blows air and water vapor out its blowhole on the top of its head. The whale's breath, forced out the hole at 450 kilometers per hour, is composed of air and water vapor. It can reach 5 meters high and be seen from 2 kilometers away on a clear day. It contains a fishy smell and oily substance, which can leave a residue on a camera lens if it's too close. Whales breathing, or the blow, is usually the first sign that a whale is present. Now this is an interesting paragraph. It has a lot of detail. But if we look at the first sentence, my camera is all slimy. Now, if the main idea is the topic sentence, and the topic sentence usually occurs as the first sentence of the paragraph, is this what the paragraph is talking about? In other words, is the paragraph talking about the camera? Well, if we look into the supporting sentences, we don't really hear much more about the camera. It starts talking about a whale and the blowhole of a whale and how a whale breathes and how when it breathes it blows air and water vapor and it comes from the top of its head and it comes out of the hole at 450 kilometers an hour. You can see there's a couple more sentences after, but you can see that this is not about a camera. So therefore, the topic sentence is not the first sentence. Let's look at the last sentence. Whales breathing, or the blow, is usually the first sign that a whale is present. Well, it's a good sentence, and it talks about the whale, but we still can't be sure if this is the topic sentence. Let's look at question number 1. What is the main idea? As I said before, the main idea is an idea that is talked about over and over again. It is repeated. When we read this paragraph, what is the one thing that comes to mind? Is it the camera? No. Is it about the blowhole? Maybe. Is it about a whale itself? That's also a possibility. When we reread the paragraph, we see that it's talking about the whale's breath, or otherwise known as the whale's blow. So what is the main idea? In this case, it's the blow, or the whale's blow. Number 2 is asking, what is the paragraph telling us about the whale? Well, we've already answered that question. It's telling us about the whale's breath. It talks about how it smells. It talks about what it feels like. So it has a fishy smell and an oily substance. And it talks about where it can be seen, which is from 5 meters high and from 2 kilometers away. So for question number 2, the paragraph again is really telling us about the whale's breath. Question number 3 says, reading the paragraph again, focus on what idea keeps being discussed. Is it about the camera? Well, I think we've already discussed it's not about the camera. If it was about the camera, all of these sentences in the paragraph would relate to the camera. When you look below, you'll see some highlighted words. The highlighted words are blowhole, breathes, blew, blows air, breath, whales breathing, and the blow. These highlighted words are a hint. Again, is it about the camera? No. It's actually about the whale's breath. So to answer this question, what is the main idea? The main idea is about the whale's breath. As you can see, this was a really good example of an embedded main idea. It is a little bit tricky, and you do have to read carefully, and you do have to read the paragraph completely before deciding what it's about. Make sure you ask yourself the question, what is being repeated? What is mentioned over and over again? This will give you the answer as to what the main idea is. It should be what the whole paragraph is about. Careful not to be tricked on the first sentence. It's not always the topic sentence as the main idea. Now let's look at exercise 1-1. Here we have a paragraph, and it's about what seemed to be about computers. Now let's review the parts of the paragraph. First, we need to have a topic sentence. The topic sentence contains the main idea. This one is a relatively easy paragraph. As you can see, the topic sentence, as well as the main idea, are in the first sentence. The topic here is about computers. What about computers? Well, they are excellent machines to help students. The first sentence here is our topic sentence. So what is the main idea? Well, you could say the main idea is about computers. You could also say that it's about computers being excellent machines, or you could also say the topic sentence itself, which are computers are excellent machines to help students. Any of these answers would be fine. This is your topic sentence as well as your main idea. Now let's review the rest of the paragraph. The next sentence, or the next few sentences, should be your supporting sentences. They should relate back to the idea about why computers make excellent machines that help students. Let's look at the first sentence. It says, before computers, students had to do their homework on typewriters. Well, that doesn't necessarily say why computers are excellent machines, but it is an indication that computers might be more helpful. Let's go on to the next sentence and find out why. It says, typewriters did not allow you to fix changes easily. Ah, that is very true. So now we have a very good supporting sentence as to why computers are helpful for students. There it is right there. The next sentence says, today, computers let students move information around without retyping and correcting errors simply by using the backspace or delete key. Does that explain why computers make excellent machines and why they help students? You bet it does. There's our second supporting sentence. The next sentence says, computers also make research more convenient for students. And then it goes on to say more. With a click of the mouse, you can have accurate information at your fingertips, an assortment of websites to choose from. Well, I think those are all good reasons as to why computers are helpful for students. There's our third supporting sentence. The next part of the paragraph, we should expect to have a concluding sentence. The concluding sentence is the ending of the paragraph. Here it says, gone are the days of homework taking students hours to complete. It is a concluding sentence because it really kind of sums up all of this that we just talked about. It explains that computers do make it easier to help students in their homework. So, the last sentence, as we'd expect, is our concluding sentence. It's not necessarily a restatement, but it does sum up the paragraph. Now let's look at exercise 1-2. This one is a little more difficult because we have to read the paragraph in full detail. Remember, it's important to read the entire paragraph to make sure you know what the main idea is about, because as we mentioned before, it's not always in the first sentence, it's not always in the end sentence. It can be embedded, or it could even be placed in the middle of the paragraph itself. So let's take a look at this one. The first sentence is quite long. It actually ends here. So let's read it together. It says, although Michelangelo is very famous as a painter whose masterpiece is the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, perhaps his greatest works are his sculptures. So we have to be careful. The topic sentence is not the very first line. It's actually part of the first sentence, but you have to read a little bit further to find it. So in the first line, we talked about Michelangelo, who is very famous as a painter. Some people might want to underline this as the topic sentence, but it isn't the topic sentence, because when we read on, we find out that everything else in the sentences, all of the supporting sentences of the paragraph, don't relate to why Michelangelo is a famous painter. They relate to another idea. Let's continue. So we said that he's famous for his work in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican City. That is true. But look at the next piece of the sentence. It says, perhaps his greatest works are his sculptures. That there is really the main idea. He was known as a painter, but he's much more famous for his sculptures. So, take your pen and underline that perhaps his greatest works are his sculptures. This is actually the topic sentence, and we'll go on to see how everything else in the sentence relates to that. The first sentence here, as our supporting sentence says, artists in this time period before Michelangelo's birth in 1475 painted or created statues of religious scenes. But their painting and statues were more like stick figures than real human beings. It's another long sentence, but this whole idea relates to other painters and how even though they did sculptures, they weren't really that good. They more look like stick figures, like that. Michelangelo, on the other hand, his statues were more like human beings. So we need to find out more about that idea. This topic sentence does relate to why his greatest works were his sculptures. Let's look at the next sentence. It says Michelangelo's statues show people with muscles and veins. Ah, yes, there, muscles and veins. It relates to why his statues were so good, or his sculptures were so good. Real bodies on real people. Again, another idea that relates to why his sculptures were so good. Moses, a statue which today is displayed in the Church of St. Peter in Chains in Rome, shows a strong man who survived many years living in the desert. So this is actually an example of one of his sculptures. It's always good to use examples in your writing. It is part of the supporting sentence, but an example really proves to your reader that you know what you're talking about. So, again, this does relate back to why Michelangelo is well known for his sculptures. This paragraph is not finished. It actually continues on, which is why you'll notice that there is no concluding sentence. I really wanted to draw your attention to the supporting ideas and the main idea, and to note the position of the main idea, because it's not in the first line as you'd expect. And don't be fooled by thinking that he is a famous painter, when really that's not what the article is about. So, in summary, we've already discussed the organization of a paragraph. The first thing you should have in your paragraph is a topic sentence. After the topic sentence, you must have some good, strong, supporting sentences that support your topic sentence. Remember, supporting sentences are really there to give more information about your topic in your topic sentence. The last thing you should have for your paragraph is a concluding sentence. The next thing is what goes into making a good paragraph. Well, we said we have to have a main idea, and the main idea is usually in the topic sentence. It's the topic, or the one thing that gets repeated in the paragraph. It's the one thing that you want to discuss. The next thing you want to remember is that for every paragraph, it should be about one topic. Remember, one topic, one paragraph. The reason we want to do that is because if you start talking about different ideas, then your writing becomes confusing to your reader. Very, very important that you have one topic for one paragraph. If you want to discuss another topic, remember to start a new paragraph. The next thing that you want to have is a very strong topic sentence. The strong topic sentence is very important because this is your first sentence in your paragraph, and as I said, it sets up the rest of your paragraph. The last thing you want to make sure you have is a good concluding sentence, and we talked about a couple of ways that you could finish your concluding sentence, either a restatement, a suggestion, or offering a question to your reader. The last thing we discussed was the main idea. Remember, the main idea is your topic sentence, or it's in your topic sentence. It is your topic. It's what you're going to be talking about. Remember to read your paragraph very carefully because the topic sentence is not always located in the first position or as the first sentence of your paragraph. Sometimes it's in the middle of the paragraph, and sometimes it's at the end of the paragraph, closer to the concluding sentence. You also have to read very carefully because sometimes, as we discussed, a main idea can be embedded. With an embedded main idea, you have to read very carefully. You have to think about what is the one that keeps getting repeated in the paragraph. What is the one idea? If you could sum it up in one word, what would that one word be? That will be your embedded main idea. This now concludes Unit 1, Paragraph and Main Idea.